Hello and welcome to Series 4 of Autism in Conversation with Auticon, a podcast from Auticon, a global IT consultancy whose consultants are all autistic. We're here with this podcast to help raise greater understanding and appreciation of autism through fascinating conversation with fantastic guests. Hosted by me, Carrie Grant MBE. Each episode will feature inspirational guests from all walks of life who each share a passion for making the world more inclusive. We'll be talking about the many benefits of hiring neurodivergent talent, through to some of the more common challenges faced by autistic adults navigating the workplace, plus so much more. All of my 4 children are neurodivergent, so this is a subject very close to my heart, and I'm really looking forward to facilitating some great conversations about autism and hopefully learning some new things along the way. I hope you enjoy it. Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. Autistic people can often thrive when the right supports are put in place, but it can be extremely difficult to navigate a variety of systems to obtain the help required. For instance, securing the right support for SEN children at school, navigating the education, health and care plan system, that's a whole other nightmare, or sourcing additional support in the wider world of work once you leave school. This episode looks to discuss some of the resources that are available, as well as provide hints and tips around how to access these, along with helpful signposting regarding where else to seek support. So to discuss this today, I'm joined by Sunil Chothi, who's an independent SEN advocate and SEND consultant at SEND SAS. I love this. SEND SAS, Specialist Advocacy Services. SAS is definitely what we need. Welcome, Sunil. We've got Renato Fantoni, we've got Susanna Fantoni, and we've also got Catriona Stewart, OBE no less, autistic charity founder, researcher and influencer. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It's lovely to have you on the programme today. So this is such a massive topic and we've only got 45 minutes, so we're going to rush through it as much as we can to get your collective kind of experiences on how you navigate systems, the systems that so often do let us down. Catriona, let's come to you first. Can we talk about even just navigating the diagnostic system and how difficult that is and what improvements could happen?
Okay, so it can be quite difficult for people to access that diagnostic assessment, and most of that's coming down to poor understanding of what autism actually is, who can be autistic, which is anyone. It's present across the world, it's across genders, ethnicities, ages, but because of poor understanding, because when people don't fit the archetypal image of autism, which is still, a lot of the time, is still a child, male, lines up their toy dinosaurs, rocks in a corner, and so on, or possibly a very eccentric professor, that absent-minded professor kind of picture that, So if you don't fit that, trying to access the assessment, well, they often don't get past the gatekeepers. So girls and women, for example, minority gender people, and boys and men who don't fit the stereotype, specifically individuals on the whole who have learnt how to mask, what we call masking, to develop those strategies for survival and desperately kind of trying to fit in. So as adults, we are judged against a set of quality of life criteria that doesn't really fit us. And so when we have relationships, jobs, or possibly raising families, it's assumed we're doing fine, we don't have unmet support needs, but autistic people who are able and want to access the world of work, it's often a trade-off for us.
Yeah.
Because work can be so very debilitating, not the work itself perhaps, but everything that goes with it. So basically, anyone who doesn't fit the expected picture through their gender, their ethnicity and skin colour, through the levels at which they do operate in the social world, can face a lot of barriers to having their needs addressed.
And what, if someone is listening to this now and they're thinking, I'm trying to get into this system somehow and it feels like it's impossible. I've been to see my GP. My GP's just said, no, you don't seem to me like you're autistic. What can they do? What can we do?
Okay, well, I think one of the first things to do is to actually find out what the diagnostic pathway is in your local area, because it can be quite different depending on where you are. If you can possibly find someone who's been through it themselves, all the better. But do your research. Write everything you want to tell them down. Write down the things that make you feel, your experiences that have led you to believe that you are autistic, because it's quite, it can be very easy to freeze up when talking to someone, and especially if you're anxious.
Yeah.
Take someone with you if you can to appointments for backup and assurance. Find support if you can. It is a stressful process and involves exposing all those parts of yourself that you've worked so hard for so long to hide, to mask.
Yeah.
And finally, I would say tap into the peer support networks if you can, such as SWAN in Scotland, because you'll get advice and information from them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Catriona. Sunil, let's talk about the education system. This is where everyone has just lent their ear in to their speakers right now. Could you explain to us what it is that you do?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Carrie. So I'm what we call an independent SEN advocate and an SEN consultant. And what that really is, I primarily support families nationally navigating the SEN system, the EHC system. Often that involves resolving disputes, a lot of tribunal work, mediation, and really just navigating families through a very complicated system where many families find it stressful and they need that extra person to help navigate that system. And I have a background, as you know, working in local authority, and that's become very beneficial when having the benefit of working with both sides of the fence has really helped me, giving that sort of cutting edge and supporting families nationally. I
just want to say also, I know I'm always saying this to you, but you are amazing. And when you were at the local authority, there are those people out there that are the good guys that actually get it. And when you meet those people, you're absolute gold for us. So I'm imagining, though, Sunil, that by the time parents might contact you, they're probably tearing their hair out, right? What sort of things are they needing at the point where they're contacting you?
So parents contact me in a range of situations. One of the few of the common situations that they've been refused EHC assessment or plan. The world falls apart. That's the support. That's what they've been pinning their hopes for. It's the golden passport for the support. Other common areas is that they're not getting the one-to-one adult support. They're not getting therapeutic support, speech and language, occupational therapy. And ultimately, there's a lot of cases where they're just simply in the wrong school. They're struggling in the mainstream school. They want a special school. Or, and I know this will be close to your heart, is that just finding the right school for their particular child with their particular SEN profile. So. Yes. It's a real, battle where parents come to me. I also have cases where, sad cases where SEN pupils are excluded permanently from school.
Yeah, had some of that too.
Yeah, and so many times it's those kinds of almost crisis situations. Parents come to me in desperation, looking for advice, looking for help and support. And
is it possible to solve these issues? Because it almost feels sometimes it's the system itself, not the people. There are people that their attitude is very computer says no, but there are also some, the good guys are out there. But is it that the system fails us?
This is quite a big question. I think advocates like myself and maybe other legal representatives in this area, they'll probably say that, well, if everyone obeyed the law, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
Good point.
The other situation for the local authorities is that over the years, their budget for SEN has shrunk. So there's a tension about trying to shrink in budget, a law that protects, very much protects the child. In terms of tribunals, it's around 93% win rate for families. So it's very high for families to actually push all the way and advocate all the way. And they have, and I've had many families who've had very great results where it's literally been life-changing to have someone like myself or someone just to advocate for their child's needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of alluded to it there, but why is it important for young people to get the support from a young age?
Yes, I mean, ultimately what an EHC plan should do is about preparing the child for adulthood, preparing the child for independence, preparing the child for the workplace. So getting the support right is so crucial, and having a team around the child and identifying the child's particular needs and interests, harnessing those particular strengths, it's so important. And I was even thinking about, as we probably heard this week, about the professor from Cambridge. He had, he had special needs, and I think with the right support, he couldn't speak, if I'm right, only speak for the age of 18. And now he had a lot of speech and language therapy, so he had intervention. So, and that's kind of, I think there's been a huge factor in terms of leading him to where he is. So actually having the right intervention can be really sort of life-changing for these a lot of these young people. And sometimes, unfortunately, they're given very low expectations.
Yeah.
And the parents are told this, this is how much your child's going to achieve. And I told it in a very sort of polite way. But, parents who know their child the best, I actually say, no, I think there's something in my child that they can achieve more.
Yeah.
And they just need the right support, the right coaching, the right encouragement, the right environment to bring that out to fulfill their potential.
Absolutely, Sunil. Susanna, it's lovely to see you. When were you first diagnosed?
So I actually have multiple diagnoses, as a lot of people with autism do. It very rarely comes alone. So I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 3, and then autism when I was 15.
Wow, massive gap. What a massive gap between the two.
Yeah.
When you were 15 then, what was your response to learning that you're autistic?
So I was actually in denial for a bit, but not because it didn't make sense. For me, it made a lot of sense. It was like, oh, wow, okay, that explains a lot. But the day after I received my diagnosis, I just happened to bump into the pastoral manager in the corridor, and I told her, and her response was, oh yeah, we've always known. And I, as a very rule, rigid, autistic teenager, I just could not accept the idea that for the past 5 years my school had known this, yet hadn't been supporting me, and instead had been punishing me for things that clearly weren't in my control. So that put me into a state of denial. Eventually I came to accept it, and it's just part of who I am.
Now, I remember first hearing about you, because we're going to meet your dad in just a moment, but I first heard about you when I think you were just going off to university, or it was the early days of uni, and you've since graduated, and, you are amazing and super clever. What would you say have been the challenges that you faced? Because I know by then you were doing your social media platform, you're out and proud, and there you are. But what challenges have you faced through university and then into the workplace?
For me, the majority of the challenges were back in school when I didn't have that diagnosis. I was rigorously bullied the entire time I was in school. I was labelled as being naughty and bad from the moment I started primary school, just 4 weeks after my 4th birthday. And obviously that had a detrimental effect on my sense of self-worth and my mental health in general. I would say there is a massive gap once formal education ends. And as someone who, I know Catriona brought it up, who you're essentially taught to hide all these differences your entire life because you're made to think that they're bad. But then in order to get support, you have to suddenly admit to that. And it can be very traumatizing going through those kind of processes. I experienced that with the benefit system particularly. But yeah, it's extremely difficult going from structure to no structure. And I have contacted organizations, but even people like Mensa say, oh, well, I don't think you're autistic enough to really join our social groups. And it's like, well, then what am I meant to do? Because people aren't, employment is one of my passions, and I have approximately a 32% chance of ever becoming employed based on the fact that I have multiple disabilities, and the disabilities that I have, and epilepsy particularly, is people are very against employing people with epilepsy, even though it's extremely common. So yeah, I have not managed to make that jump. And for mental health reasons, I don't really see myself doing so in the near future either, because based on all the bullying and the discrimination I've received, I just can't deal with the amount of no's that I know I'm going to receive if I start applying for hundreds and hundreds of jobs.
Wow. Susanna, I find that very sad to hear, considering everything I know about your incredible talents and skills and intelligence. Through this podcast, we should get into some of the things that we might need to change to see that change, Susanna. But thank you for sharing that. Renato, coming to you now for your parental view. It's lovely to have you as a guest on our podcast. How have you found navigating the system?
In a way, I have to sort of pick up the baton that Susanna was waving a minute ago about denial, or rather, from my perspective, it's more just complete ignorance, because my wife, Mandy, Susanna's mum, was often talking about possibilities of autism with Suze, and because she'd had previous sort of first-hand experience, knowledge of it, I never had done. So when we had this first diagnosis, or the diagnosis, and it was in a hospital, my first reaction was like, I just thought it was really unfair the way the whole sort of assessment was done. I didn't like it. I just felt to me like it was setting somebody up to fall, and that kind of lived with me for a long time before I started realising. Well, I mean, Susanna, as it happens, kind of embraced it. I think it probably helped her quite a lot. From my point of view, it was like it's difficult to take on board because something I knew nothing about, and of course, when you kind of in that negative mindset, you're not particularly motivated to find out more about it. But that did change over time as I became more aware of what the traits were. And Susanna was always flagging them up and saying, this has happened, I've done this because of my autism. I began to realise it. But one of the challenges is that unless somebody, and this kind of counts across the whole board of disabilities, unless you've rubbed shoulders with somebody that's got something, you're not. It's hard to get people to be motivated to want to know about it. And so my daughter had it, so therefore that was the motivation. I'm in a workplace now where I come across people with this kind of disability on a very frequent basis. And in fact, I suppose I'm one of the experts on it, but people who don't know. And I think this is the broader problem. And that leads into educational support, because people, what I've realised working in an institution, and I'm sure teachers are the same, you just have kind of a list of things you have to do as a teacher, and then you have another list of things that you would call as obstacles. And I imagine that from an educational point of view, this comes in that second list. It's an obstacle to educating, and therefore it creates a negative mindset. And everything that emanates from that continues in that vein until you get somebody who's probably had an experience a bit like mine, and then they want to become an advocate in support of the person with whatever the condition is, in this case autism.
Yeah, and moving back to you, Catriona, if we're talking about challenges and blocks that are within systems, what are the systems that might be difficult to navigate when it comes to the workplace? You know, Sunil has spoken about education. What about the workplace?
Well, I think unfortunately what's been very clearly articulated here is the damage that is done to young people as they, try to make their way through these systems that raise so many barriers to them achieving their potential and actually reaching adulthood with their mental health intact. So that's a big challenge actually for a young autistic adult, is just to even see themselves in that world of work and to really have that ambition. And also quite a few young people don't reach the full level of their potential during school. So even when they get into their workplace, they may well be working actually below their abilities. And that in itself can provide a whole lot of challenges in terms of their well-being and the relationship with the line management. Communication's a biggie. So if you're used to finding it very difficult to get people to understand you, that also has an impact on your self-confidence, and then how you actually relate to your colleagues and your managers. And then communication coming the other way, vague language, ambiguous language, all that kind of thing. Relationships with colleagues, the whole social thing about being at work, and the sensory environment itself is a big thing for autistic people, because if you're absolutely exhausted by your sensory environment, you're not going to work terribly well. So hierarchy, communication with management.
What's interesting there, Catriona, is then in all of this, really none of that stuff is about the actual job itself.
No,
all of this is all the communication, having to socialise in the kitchen over when you're all making your coffee, all of those awkward moments, socialise, networking after work. It's all of that stuff that can add huge amounts of stress.
Absolutely, and the reasonable adjustments area is actually can be quite tricky as well, because I ran an employment project funded by Scottish Government when I was still working with SWAN, and it can be quite difficult for an autistic person to know what reasonable adjustments they can ask for, because they've never been given that permission before to sort of say, well, these are my needs. And then HR and the management, they may kind of be getting very, very frustrated because they're offering all sorts of things that aren't appropriate. Yeah. And so there's a lot of frustration builds up. And I think it's, the thing about reasonable adjustments and inclusion in the workplace is I think people are frightened it's going to be really resource heavy. It really isn't. It just requires a bit of understanding and goodwill. And that can make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, I often talk about this, that the biggest adjustment that I would love people to make is just mindset stuff. It doesn't cost a penny to change your mindset. That's just stuff that, Google is free. It's out there. Go read up. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to our second section. We've had some really stark scenarios there so far in our programme. I'm keen to now look at the other perspective on this by looking at celebrating some of the examples of really good practice and good experiences that you may have had. Now, we don't have anyone from Auticon on this episode today, but Auticon is the company that creates this podcast and has been known to turn lives around for autistic IT consultants. Auticon does this through a model that is totally committed to working to autistic strengths, whilst minimising any unnecessary external stresses as much as possible. For example, by providing an autism-friendly assessment process, through to providing job coaches for their consultants and team training for their clients who'll be employing the consultants. Relatively straightforward stuff when you think about it, but the impact of which is absolutely huge. We know that for the many consultants that work with Auticon and the companies that they work with too. Susanna, coming to you first, are there any examples of when you think you've been given great support?
So I don't think I've necessarily ever been given support. Is something that I've always had to find. Obviously, I was only diagnosed with autism the week before I went on study leave for my GCSEs. So throughout school, I never had anything in place, despite already being considered SEM because of my epilepsy. And then when I got to university, we filled out all the forms, everything was in place. And just before Christmas, the support department suddenly realised that they'd written me down wrong and they'd put me as dyslexic instead of autistic or something like that. So they actually had more money that they could spend on me. But instead of just correcting their issue, they stopped my support and expected me to phone them. I'm a 19-year-old in a brand new environment with autism and social anxiety. I'm not going to phone you. So that entire first year, I had no support in place. But we managed to fix it. This is my second year, my third year, my master's year. And I saw this amazing mentor once a week. We'd sit down, go through what needed to get done. I had a planner. We color-coded it. Blue was work, red was chores, green was fun. But really, it was only because I got on well with her that it was so helpful. It can be very hard as an autistic person to trust someone. Our way of forming trust works very differently to the neurotypical mind. So it was very subjective. For me, in honesty, I think the best support I've received is from my peers. And my number one piece of advice for anyone going to university, particularly those with autism, is find yourself a society. I joined the Doctor Who Society at the end of my first year, and it really became my safe haven. Being surrounded by a group of people who have the same interest as you, but will also probably understand on a deeper level. We'd often joke we could rename ourselves the Autistic Society if we wanted to, because most of us were there and autistic, and we just got each other. And I could go there every Wednesday and, do whatever I needed to do, act however I needed to, and no one would judge because they all understood who I was. And I'm still, really great friends with a few of them to this day. And I think, that's always my number one piece of advice, is just find yourself a group. Obviously, it's difficult once you leave that integrated structure, but there are ways of finding those kind of people, and I'd say
your people.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just want to pick up on something that Susanna mentioned there about having a mentor that you happen to get on with. They happen to be really good. And I think sometimes when I'm doing these podcasts, we talk to people about best practice. And I do feel that some of it happens almost by luck rather than design. And I guess one of my questions is, how do we change from those lucky situations where you just happen to find someone that happened, like we did with Sunil, you find that person in the local authority that really is your person. How do we get from just having a lucky person to actually changing the system so that that's available to everybody? Sunil, what would be the advantages and the good practice that you've seen of that?
I think that the good practices I've seen, unfortunately, there have been those rare moments, unfortunately. There's probably not enough. And I've been in this for quite a number of years. So I think that there have been those occasions where I've seen a head teacher or Senko who can think outside the box, and they're willing to look at a child's needs and say, actually, let's do something a little bit unconventional. Let's just try this. Let's be a little bit flexible. Yes. Let's give that child that extra sensory break. Let them come in a bit later and leave a bit. Let them keep their jacket on in the classroom or some kind of adjustment. What I've seen is that these professionals, and it's interesting, some of them have sort of personal experience of autism themselves or in their family, so they have a greater understanding of it, and they're sympathetic. and flexible to accommodate the school environment and the curriculum according to his child's needs. So I think I'd really celebrate those individuals and those schools and those head teachers who are maybe more out there, but there's a few I've encountered who've actually done a great job in including the child with additional needs into the classroom and made them feel part of the community as much as possible. But it's that key word of being flexible and being adapting curriculum and your approach, which is like non-traditional, and I think that's what probably needs to change.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about working with you, I think you went through at least two. I've got 4 children with additional needs. I think we've got 3 AHCPs. I think you've done 2 of them. But I think one of the things, the phrase I remember I first heard it with you is, "We don't normally do this."
Yeah.
But that is my favourite sentence, and you're saying it there. You're a living example of that flexibility that you're looking for in those head teachers. Oh, actually, why can't we do that? Like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Why can't that student wear their jacket? Like, I haven't asked you to take your jacket off today. You didn't ask me to take my jacket off today in order to sit in a room.
Yeah.
So why do we have to have all these? The rules at school sometimes are a little archaic and strange. Renato, let's come over to you. From your perspective as a parent, are there any examples that you can give of being provided with what you would call decent support, or that you've seen, maybe not with Susanna, but you've just seen it there, you think that really works?
Okay, I mean, I'll answer it in a second. I just want to sort of frame it, because it occurs to me that the whole arena, if you like, is always entered via a medical door. I mean, I know I'm mixing my metaphors, do excuse me for that, but it's always like getting a diagnosis or, EHCP or whatever, which has always got a medical flavour to it.
Yeah. You never get diagnosed as neurotypical, do you?
No,
maybe one day.
Maybe someone should seek it, which is obviously a really good point. But there's this medical thing, and of course the medical box has got very thick leaden walls, which does not really, despite the best efforts of some practitioners who don't have any time for anything else, but it doesn't really leak over into other things like social, which is a kind of thing what we're talking about. So really what I'm coming to is the fact that the decent support didn't really happen until I went to your group, Carrie, your parents' group, when we started it some 10 and a half years ago, perhaps. Yeah. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is that you have to find somebody to assist you to reach out before you can get back again, because the first thing about coming to attending a parents group, and nowadays of course things can happen online and in a virtual environment as well as physically, the first key thing for a parent or a carer is to know that you are not alone. There is this thing about people just knowing that it is patience, it's listening, it's all the kind of stuff that those of us within the kind of greater community know about, and we just got to get this, spread it further. And I'd just like to finish this section of mine by saying that some years ago I went to a conference which was about the co-occurrence of autism and epilepsy. I was invited to it, and there was an eminent professor whose name I don't forget from UCH, and he said, "I don't want to hear the word autism or high function or low function, which is what they're using those days. I don't want to hear any of that mentioned again. I want to get rid of all the labels and get to the position where everybody's treated individually." Then he said, "Well, look, of course I know I'm asking for the impossible, but," he said, "we have to keep that as the goal, as a species, because that will help us resolve everything." It's a very lofty goal, but really that's what we have to put in our sights and try and maintain it as much as possible.
Thank you, Renato. And Catriona, I can see you nodding away there. I know you do a huge amount of training and advocacy work, plus you're heavily involved in the diagnostic process. Are things getting better? And if they are, how are they getting better?
Well, I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to say, yes, I think things are getting better. But I would like to just come back with what Renato said just now about the medicalisation of autism and other neurominorities. I think that's one of the single most difficult things about, that we have to deal with, is being medicalised. I hate the term symptom. I don't talk about characteristics. Anyway, don't want to go off on a tangent. But yeah, I think things are getting better. I would say the bar was pretty low when I started off, Carrie, working in this area, and I think some respects it still is. There's a long way to go in terms of the education system, for example, but there is more support and better awareness, better understanding, and wider society. I have to say, I have had a couple of recent experiences that have been so just so positive in terms of, really proactively accommodating respectful behaviours towards me in two different work contexts by organisations that are not autism specific. And that just tells me that A, it is
Yes.
possible, and B, it is actually happening in some places. And it's so wonderful when it does. I'm a diagnostician for Axia these days. Approach there is very person-centred. As a professional body, we do have to, unfortunately, still use the medical language, but we definitely promote positive identity and an assets-based approach, and we run post-diagnostic support as well. And so there are pockets of really great practice going on around the country of that I'm sure. There's more peer support groups around the UK as well. That's so important. I mean, as Susanna really clearly was pointing out, if you're with your own kind, as we would say in Scotland, it makes a big difference to how you view yourself in the world.
Absolutely. Catriona, whilst we've still got you, looking to our third section, which is looking to the future. So let's start with you. If you were to kind of dream up what might be like best practice and what the world would look like in 5 or 10 years, what would you like to see happen in the future? What's on your heart to see the biggest change, the biggest need?
I'm kind of with Renato here, I think. I can't see it happening for a very long time that we don't need the labels. But I would like to see a world where the labels are only part of a kind of support, means for support and inclusion and adjustments and treating people like, individuals. I would like to see a world where autistic people and other neurominority people's human rights are respected and supported, because at the moment, to me, there's a huge human rights issue going on. I think I would say I would like, as a means of getting there, rather than just the big picture, but the means of getting there, I would like to see more joined up thinking and partnership work across all sectors, so that, you don't have a child who is in CAMS who gets turfed out at the age of 18, for example, that, it's very much the individual approach. And in terms of social inclusion, all of it underpinned by the lived experience evidence. And I would like to see clear processes in place for impact evaluation, so that we, instead of doing more of what doesn't work, we take innovative entrepreneurial approaches. So that's it in a nutshell, I think.
I want to live in that world. Catriona, thank you so much. Renato, what about for you? What would you like to see?
For people to understand the experience, because I noticed with Susanna's now very... if she's going to a place that she doesn't like the noise with other people, she will take her earplugs with her and she will wear them, and she's very happy to share the reason why if somebody were to ask, and really on the using that as a springboard. I notice other people, sometimes you see small children wearing bigger headphones and stuff like that, and I just think the visualization of it, and then maybe something whereby people can start to understand it from the inside. People can see that other people have sensory conditions, and that's all audio. But I'm thinking, there's various exhibitions on nowadays in town in London, which are kind of three great paintings like Van Gogh or whomever, and you can walk into them and physically experience it. You're experiencing from the inside. And if there was some kind of, maybe we should set up an exhibition, a museum, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something, an immersive thing whereby people leave it thinking, is that what it's really like? And then, and as they're leaving the exhibition, it says, well, that's what it's really like for maybe 1% of the population, but because the permutations are infinite. But that's just the way. I think people have got to understand what it's like to be in that classical situation of being somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, absolutely, Renato. That's a great idea. Susanna, your dad's just said some really good stuff there. What would you like to see in the next 5 or 10 years?
Yes, I kind of, following on from the sensory stuff, I mean, dream world for me would be where fridges and freezers and supermarkets don't buzz.
Yeah, me too.
Where
I'm on that one.
Lights don't buzz.
Yep.
Where Hoovers have finally been made silent, so my mum's intense cleaning doesn't frustrate me constantly. But also, I want to see a continuation in the improvements that are starting to be made in research, looking more and more into women, making more co-created projects, participatory science, so that we can truly get the understanding from the autistic community, and not just what male scientists think male autistic people are experiencing. And hopefully the more data we're able to collect, the better we can make the diagnostic system. And people won't have to be living, women specifically, into their 50s, 60s, not even realising that they are autistic.
Yeah.
So yeah, but noise is definitely the thing that needs to go.
Okay, thank
for me.
you. We're going to turn the volume down then. And Sunil, there'll be so many parents, I'm sure, listening to this, people navigating university, the education system. Can it be fixed? Is there anything that we can do? Could we be hopeful 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, I know the government is actually reviewing the system at the moment, and they have been doing for a while. But I suppose if there is a dream list, I think one thing I would like to see is the educational system. When it comes to an SEN child or a young person getting support, we need a system that's far more easy, far more simple, less complex, less bureaucratic, maybe a little bit more human, to help support families. It shouldn't have to be a battle. It shouldn't be so hard for families of SEN pupils to get the right support for that. It shouldn't be that way. And I do at this moment, I do want to give a bit of a shout out for SEN families. They're an amazing group of people. I speak with them probably nearly every day of my life, and what they go through is it's emotionally exhausting. It's stressful. And what they have to do is a real battle. It's a challenge just having a child at home, but to have to fight a system that seems so unfriendly, bureaucratic. So I would love to see a system that's far more easy and far more simple. Dreaming more, it'd be great to have more funding for schools, for local authorities, to make it possible that support can be accessed. I also see that there's a need for maybe extra training amongst staff, amongst school staff, that bringing about the awareness of SEN kids or autism needs. And also there's just a lot of awareness. So I'm just thinking about even something like masking. There seems to be a bit of a disbelief amongst professionals. It maybe doesn't seem to be credible enough. So it's just having that understanding of how the condition affects families and children. And ultimately, it would be great to have more investment, more options for SEN pupils. Like, okay, if they're struggling in mainstream, what can we do? Is there going to be an appropriate SEN school? Is there going to be something in between a special and a mainstream? So there needs to be more flexible options where, so many parents, they come to me and says, I just don't know what to do. There's no schools in my area. Yeah. The school is 50 miles away. Yeah,
we've had that conversation.
We have actually. But having options actually just makes, that part of the journey just a bit more easier and less of a fight. So I suppose these are ultimately my 5 to 10 years, what we'd like to see to make life easier. It's already hard enough for some families.
Yeah.
So, that'll be sort of my sort of summary.
Thank you so much, guys. You've been amazing on today's show. It's been wonderful listening to you. My thanks to Sunil Chothi, Renato Fantoni, Susanna Fantoni, and of course, Catriona Stewart. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. If you'd like to know more about the podcast, would be interested in applying for a job as an Auticon consultant, or would like further information about how Auticon can help support your business, please visit auticon.co.uk. This episode was recorded in March 2023. Recording and production was at Strathmore Studios in Clerkenwell, London. It was engineered by Alex Brown and Jonas Gustafsson. Edited by Billy Godfrey, and music was by The Lethargies. That's all from us this time. Thanks again for listening, and bye for now.